Women are nothing but machines for producing children. That's what Napoleon Bonaparte once said. Harsh, right? At first glance, it sounds ridiculous, maybe even offensive. But dig deeper, and it reveals something far more complex. You see, Napoleon wasn't just a war general or an emperor. He was a man obsessed with power, vision, and legacy. And in that pursuit, he realized something that most people don't want to admit. Greatness and emotional comfort rarely live in the same house. Everyone loves the idea of a powerful man, until they actually meet him. Ambitious, relentless, focused, dominant. It sounds attractive, until that same man is emotionally unavailable, too consumed by his mission to play the role of a romantic partner the way society expects. Great men, truly great men, don't show up with flowers every weekend. They show up exhausted, mentally elsewhere, driven by a vision that pulls them away from comfort and deeper into obsession. And Napoleon knew this, not just as a ruler, but as a lover. His letters to Josephine? They weren't cool or confident. They were fiery, desperate, even embarrassing. He poured himself into them while he was off building an empire. Meanwhile, she entertained other men. That betrayal crushed him. But it also taught him something. Not all women want a man consumed by greatness. Because greatness doesn't cuddle. Greatness doesn't ask how your day was. Greatness isn't stable, it's dangerous. And for many, especially in relationships, danger isn't exciting. It's threatening. It can't be molded, tamed, or relied upon to be emotionally present. So what happens? Many people, especially women, choose the alternative. The safer option. The man who doesn't shake the world, but who shows up on time, listens, and prioritizes her above all else. Not because he's extraordinary, but because he's manageable. That's the thing about a mediocre man. He doesn't challenge her. He doesn't have some burning obsession or mission. His life revolves around her, and that feels good, secure, comfortable, predictable. And for a lot of women, that's what love feels like. Not being thrilled, not being inspired, but being centered. And to be someone's center? That's intoxicating. You feel like a queen, but only because the man you chose acts like a subject. Napoleon saw this dynamic clearly. That quote about women being machines for children wasn't hatred, it was observation. Cold, calculated, imperial observation. He wasn't trying to win love anymore. He'd already tried that. What he wanted was truth, even if it burned. And here's the truth he discovered. The higher a man climbs, the lonelier the path becomes. Not because he doesn't want connection, but because the world he's entering is foreign to most. People say they admire greatness, but they only like it when it's pretty, when it's filtered, when it doesn't mess with their comfort zone. But a truly great man in the room, one who's focused, driven, who doesn't make small talk or apologize for dreaming bigger than everyone else, and you'll see how quickly admiration turns into resentment, especially in relationships. Napoleon lived this. He was the master of momentum, the genius of war. But even he, in all his glory, was reduced to begging Josephine not to cheat. She did anyway. Why? Because power and vision don't always inspire loyalty. They don't soothe the heart. Predictability does. Emotional availability does. A man who comes home every night and doesn't scare you with the intensity of his silence, he wins that game. That's the disconnect. Modern men are told, become successful, become powerful, become high value, and love will follow. But ask any man who's actually done it, and he'll tell you a darker truth. The more exceptional you become, the less lovable you are in the traditional sense. Because real greatness forces people to confront their own mediocrity. And most would rather avoid that confrontation than rise to meet it. That's why so many women gravitate toward men they can control. Men they can emotionally manipulate. Men who won't disappear into obsession, who won't say, not now, I'm working. Because those men are safe. And safety wins more hearts than genius ever will. Here's what most won't say out loud. Many women don't fall in love with a man's greatness. They fall in love with what they can extract from it. But the truly great man? He doesn't give like that. He doesn't orbit. He ascends. He's not trying to be emotionally available. He's trying to be historically significant. And that makes him a threat, not just to society, but to the core of modern relationships. Napoleon was criticized for being cold, too focused, emotionally distant. But how else does one conquer nations? How else does a man become legend? Not by spending his nights on the couch asking, are you okay? But by being consumed by vision, by fire, by a relentless pursuit of something bigger than himself. That's not romantic. That's terrifying. Especially to someone who wants love to feel safe and steady. So ask yourself, Do you want comfort, or do you want legacy? Napoleon already knew. Most people, especially most women, choose the former. They'll choose warmth over rest, stability over ambition. And if you're the kind of man who's walking the path of greatness, you're going to feel that. You give everything, your time, your mind, your soul, to something bigger than both of you. And then one day, you'll come home and realize she resents you for it. Because your focus becomes absence. Your discipline becomes distance. Your silence becomes emotional coldness. But you can't switch it off. You were built to chase approval. You were built to build. And in building, you break the mold of what a modern man is expected to be. That's what Napoleon understood. He didn't hate women. He just saw that most were built to walk beside a man chasing eternity. They want a man who pauses when they throw, who slows down for their insecurities, who makes them the center. And a great man, he can't do that. Not because he's cruel, but because he serves something even greater than love. So, what happens? The world punishes him. He's labeled toxic, distant, emotionally unavailable. But that's the cost of mission, of vision, of refusing to kneel to the demands of comfort and validation. In the end, even the emperor walks alone. Not because he wants to, but because those closest to him could never keep up with the fire that drove him. And that's just the beginning. Here's the brutal truth no one likes to talk about. A man can give the world everything, his mind, his time, his blood, and still come home to a partner who quietly resents him. Not because he's failed her, but because his very existence becomes a mirror she can't bear to look into. This is the great contradiction men face. You think if you succeed enough, if you become excellent enough, you'll finally be loved the way you've always hoped to be. But success doesn't make you more lovable. In many cases, it does the opposite. The more you rise, the more intimidating you become. Not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. You represent discipline, focus, fire. You remind people, especially those closest to you, of everything they know. And that is rarely admired for long. Napoleon understood this. He wasn't rejected because he lacked passion. His letters to Josephine were dripping with it. He wasn't thrown aside because he didn't care. He was left because he was becoming too much, too powerful, too consumed by a vision that didn't include emotional predictability. And so Josephine, like many, chose familiarity over fame, stability over sacrifice. She chose to be the star of her own small universe, rather than orbit a man who was busy building one that could swallow nations. And this is where many great men get broken. Not in battle, not in failure, but in love. Because they expect that love will be their refuge, their safe place, their comfort. But what they find is that love, too, has conditions. And often, those conditions are impossible to meet for a man who refuses to live a small life. Think about it. How many great, visionary, self-made men do you know who ended up abandoned, divorced, betrayed? Too many to count. And it wasn't because they weren't there. It was because they were too intense, too focused, too unwilling to slow down. Because greatness doesn't come with days off. It doesn't leave room for emotional hand-holding every time someone else needs reassurance. It's a lonely, brutal pursuit. And most people, especially women looking for emotional consistency, don't want to walk beside them. They want the idea of it. The Instagram version. The Hollywood version. But the reality? The early mornings. The late nights. The obsession. The isolation. That's not attractive. That's frightening. So what do? They settle. Upward in appearance, but downward in essence. They choose the guy who looks successful enough to brag about, but soft enough to mold. He might talk big, but he doesn't challenge them. He might have a career, but it's not his life. His ambition is manageable. His schedule is flexible. His emotional attention is theirs for the taking. And that feels safe. But here's the twist. That man, the safe one, he's rarely admired. He might be loved, even cherished. But deep down, she knows she didn't choose a thing. She chose a servant dressed as one. Someone who orbits her, not someone who commands a vision beyond her. Meanwhile, the man who won't orbit, the one who burns at 2 a.m. building something no one else can see yet, he's alone. Not because he lacks value, but because he's not emotionally available in the way modern relationships require. He's not present for constant validation. He's not afraid to walk away. And that makes him dangerous. That's the part most don't understand. The man who needs nothing from you emotionally, who isn't afraid of losing you, who doesn't shape his identity around your moods. That man is terrifying. Because he cannot be controlled. And if he cannot be controlled, He cannot be relied upon to provide the emotional leverage most people subconsciously want in a relationship. Most women, and yes, most men too, aren't looking for equals. They're looking for emotional leverage. And when they can't find it, they leave. Will they shame him? Will they try to shrink him? That's why men who build empires so often lose their homes in the process. Not because they were bad partners, but because their presence was never truly wanted. It was their potential that was. Until that potential started demanding sacrifice. You think she left because you were too cold, but she left because your fire made her sweat. You think she didn't understand your ambition, but she understood it too well, and she knew she could never compete with it. So what does a great man do with that truth? He lets go. He lets go of the illusion that he can be both loved and legendary in the way most relationships demand. He stops chasing emotional acceptance. He stops explaining himself. He stops trying to be understood. Because the higher you climb, the fewer people breathe the same air. You aren't cold. You're just on a different altitude. And very few can handle the thin air up there. So yes, if you're a man chasing something bigger than yourself, truth, vision, mastery, you're going to lose people. And sometimes, you'll lose the ones you thought would stand beside you forever. But that's the cost. And it's not just personal, it's ancient. Men have always had to choose. Build the empire or build the nest. One gives you legacy, the other gives you warmth. But rarely both. The nest asks you to be present, to slow down, to offer constant emotional support. The empire asks you to suffer, to sacrifice, to bleed. The nest wants your time. The empire wants your soul. And if you try to do both, you'll be torn in two. Because no matter how strong you are, no man can live two destinies. So make the choice. Make no mistake, this isn't about hating love or rejecting intimacy. It's about choosing. It's about understanding that the man who builds something eternal will almost always feel unloved in the process. Not because he's unworthy, but because most people don't know how to love a storm. You are not the lullaby. You are the thunder. You are not comfort. You are the edge. You are not meant to orbit. You are meant to rise. And here's the hard part. Most will never admit they resent that. They'll say they admire you. They'll say they want you to succeed. But as soon as your focus leaves them, as soon as you become more devoted to your calling than their comfort, the cracks start to show. You're too distant. You're too obsessed. You don't talk enough. You don't feel enough. You don't reassure them every second that they're the center of your universe. But that's because they're not. And they were never supposed to be. Your center is your vision, your calling, your purpose. And that's the difference. The safe man orbits her. His life is built around her moods, her needs, her timeline. And that makes her feel secure, adored, needed. But deep down, it doesn't spark respect. Not real respect. Because nothing about him leads. And here's the secret they never tell you. Love is beautiful, but respect is magnetic. The nest asks you to be present, to slow down, to offer constant emotional support. The empire asks you to suffer, to sacrifice, to bleed. The nest wants your time. The empire wants your soul. And if you try to do both, you'll be torn in two. Because no matter how strong you are, no man can live two destinies. So make the choice. Make no mistake, this isn't about hating love or rejecting intimacy. It's about choosing. It's about understanding that the man who builds something eternal will almost always feel unloved in the process. Not because he's unworthy, but because most people don't know how to love a storm. You are not the lullaby. You are the thunder. You are not comfort. You are the edge. You are not meant to orbit. You are meant to rise. And here's the hard part. Most will never admit they resent that. They'll say they admire you. They'll say they want you to succeed. But as soon as your focus leaves them, as soon as you become more devoted to your calling than their comfort, the cracks start to show. You're too distant. You're too obsessed. You don't talk enough. You don't feel enough. You don't reassure them every second that they're the center of your universe. But that's because they're not. And they were never supposed to be. Your center is your vision, your calling, your purpose. And that's the difference. The safe man orbits her. His life is built around her moods, her needs, her timeline. And that makes her feel secure, adored, needed. But deep down, it doesn't spark respect. Not real respect. Because nothing about him leads. And here's the secret they never tell you. Love is beautiful, but respect is magnetic. She may love the safe man, but she will never follow him in a fire. She'll never feel compelled to rise for him, because he doesn't demand it. But the man who burns with something bigger than himself, he demands it, without a word. His life, his energy, his silence, it all whispers one thing: rise or be left behind. And most people don't want that challenge. They say they do, but they don't. They want the idea of a strong man, but not the weight that comes with him. They want the lion, but only if it purrs. So what happens? They leave. Well, they shame you. Or worse, they try to tame you. And if you let them, if you soften your purpose to keep them close, if you dull your edge just to be more emotionally available, you lose something far more precious than love. You lose yourself. You trade your fire for their comfort. And that, my brother, is a deal you must never make. Because the world doesn't need more agreeable men. It needs dangerous men. Men who refuse to kneel. Men who make people uncomfortable just by existing. Men who are so focused, so disciplined, so relentless, that others are forced to either rise within or fall away. This is not toxic. This is masculine. Real masculinity doesn't apologize for its mission. It doesn't shrink to make others feel safe. It stands, and it burns, and it builds. So if you're that man, if you've been left, misunderstood, resented because you couldn't be what someone else needed, remember this: you weren't rejected for your flaws. You were rejected for your depth. You were rejected for your fire. Because being with you would have required them to become more. And most people don't want to become more. They want to rest. They want someone they can count on to pause everything for their fears, to hold them when they cry, to make them feel like the center of gravity. But that's not who you are. You were not built to pause. You were built to push. So stop asking why she didn't choose you. You already know. She didn't want greatness. She wanted comfort. And you, my friend, are not comfort. You were a revenant. And the world still bows to danger.